Wind moves over a road somewhere in Italy. Dust lifts, hangs, and settles like tired snow. An army passes. Tanks complain. Boots scrape, and 1,000 conversations braid into one human murmur that sounds like home moving farther away. From that moving river of men steps a private with a squared jaw and a quiet habit of listening. No legend yet, no nickname, just a family name stitched in thin thread over his heart. A name that belongs on a mailbox, not a map. He walks a little to the side of his platoon, not because he wants attention, because he's learned to hear the spaces between sounds, because silence in war is a message. He is 19. He is 20. He is whatever age a boy becomes when the world insists he stop being one. Stories like this usually begin with the first medal or the first impossible order. This one begins with a promise he never says aloud. If there is a last bridge, if there is a last road, if there is a last friend in trouble, he will not be the one who looks away. Mud on his boots dries into a thin shell. He does not break it. He keeps walking. And somewhere up ahead, a ridgeline waits for someone to make it matter. A letter rides in his pocket, soft with handling. Ink bled through the paper weeks ago. Rain did it, or sweat. The words survive anyway. A mother who writes about tomatoes ripening against the fence. A sister who names a stray dog. A father who says the tractor is coughing again, and it's probably the carburetor, same as last year. He reads that letter more for the empty spaces than the lines. The silence between sentences holds the shape of a kitchen chair, the sound of a screen door, the smell of cut grass and gasoline. All the rooms he isn't in. He folds it carefully and tucks it back. Then he checks his rifle. One ritual keeps the other alive. Around him, the company practices the language of waiting. Jokes without punchlines, teeth scraping tins, boots pulled off and immediately regretted. Someone hums a tune from before radios had war in them. Someone else carves initials into a handle with the tender attention of a jeweler. Night comes like a decision no one voted for. He doesn't sleep much. He counts breaths. He counts the seconds between flares. He teaches himself to accept fear like he accepts weather. You carry it. You don't negotiate with it. By morning, a rumor has ripened. There's a road up there, narrow, hairpins, like a bad story. A farmhouse at the bend where somebody's child first walked. Germans on the ridge. A machine gun that talks too much. Orders arrive, clipped and tired. They always do. He stands, slings the rifle, and steps into a day that hasn't decided what it wants yet. The climb begins gently. The way troubles sometimes tries to be polite. Grass gives way to stone. Stone surrenders to shale. Every switchback rearranges the sky. Artillery in the distance draws straight lines across the air and then erases them. Birds disappear. The world narrows until it's only breath and footfall and the taste of iron. Halfway up, the column pauses. Someone coughs and pretends it's nothing. Someone murmurs the name of someone not here. Our private glances down the slope where the road has already forgotten them, then up to where it remembers nothing at all. An officer points with his whole body. The gesture has no poetry in it. It is made entirely of necessity. Farmhouse, bend, ridge. That's your world now. They go. The first shots arrive wrong, too high, like a drummer who hasn't met the band yet. Then the gunner finds the rhythm. Dirt spits at their ankles, then at their knees. Then it starts wanting more. Men flatten, as if the mountain suddenly demands worship. Our private crawls to a low wall, rough as a rasp. He presses his cheek against its heat and thinks about nothing at all. Clear mind, safe hands. He moves because he has practiced moving when practice is over. The machine gun speaks in bursts that chew the morning into parts. Each burst is a word that means not here, not now, not you. He watches the timing, counts heartbeats between fury. A map blooms in his head made of gaps and breath, and the stubborn will of rocks not to move. When the bursts fall silent, he goes. Not a sprint, a clean, precise theft of distance. He steals 10 feet, then another 15. He takes what isn't offered and thanks no one. Shots rake the stones behind him. Chips sting his neck. He tastes earth. He keeps taking. By the time others notice, he's where they thought a man could not live and not die. Somewhere between the gun and the courage to approach it. He settles into the shadow of a half-sunken cart. The wood smells like old rain. He can hear the gunner's belt whispering metal. He can hear the loader breathing wrong. He lets his breath join theirs. 3 men creating a single, terrible instrument. Then he breaks the music. A grenade arcs like a brief argument and resolves in a hard, undeniable agreement. He rises into the shockwave, closes the last yards in a stride that doesn't belong to him and yet fits him perfectly and makes the machine go quiet with a decision no one back home ever taught him to make. Silence drops like a blanket and then shivers. He waits for the echo. He waits for the second gun that might be listening. None answers. Behind him, the company begins to breathe again. Up ahead, the ridge takes one step backward. They call it an outpost because calling it a hill would let men think of Sunday picnics, and there is nothing kind in its shape. Dry grass, a few stones stacked into walls that never asked to be walls. A tree as indecisive as a witness. The order is simple. Hold until relieved. Relief is a word that sounds like a promise even when it isn't one. They dig shallow because rock keeps secrets. They lay wire that whispers in wind. They place the machine gun in a scrape that is almost a foxhole and not at all a hole. He takes first. Watch. It fits the way he thinks. The knight asks questions. He answers with patience. The enemy tests the edges. A shot from somewhere that pretends to be nowhere. A footstep that pretends to be a fox. The kind of cough that has practiced not being human. Hours settle like ash. It begins small. It always does. A flare that rises with theatrical authority, throwing every blade of grass into crisp honesty. Then the movement, like a murmur at the back of a church. Then the shapes, men, always men, who don't want to be here and are here anyway. He doesn't shout. He places his shots where absence will be most persuasive. Calm, clean, 2 words, 3 results. A pause spreads across the slope like frost. They fall back, then they come again, this time with a lesson learned and a second one ready. Mortars. The hill jumps, surprised to be so alive. Dirt showers them in warm handfuls. Someone cries out and then smothers the sound as if it were a dangerous light. He moves along the line on his knees, distributing what courage he has as if it were ammunition, because tonight it is. A runner reaches them at last, breath shredded, eyes too wide. No relief, not yet. The roads are arguments, and the trucks have lost them. Hold. He looks at the men beside him and memorizes their faces, in case memory is all that keeps them together. He touches the letter in his pocket, then he sets it aside, as if even his heart knows it would be a distraction. The third attack has a voice. It sings in many throats. He lets it sing. He waits for the note that says, "Now," and when he hears it, he kills the song. Night peels its own skin. By morning, the hill is an empty thing made of spent casings and resolve. They are relieved by men whose bootprints look like theirs. The new officer nods at our private with an economy that suggests he already understands what just happened here. The nod is the size of a medal. He eats cold food that tastes like the thing it pretends to be. He sleeps without sinking. He dreams without images. He wakes without complaint. On the road again by noon, he doesn't tell the story. The hill does that work slowly as rumor campaigns move like weather systems. Fronts advance, stall, collapse, reform. A man learns to read the sky and the paper and the faces of sergeants. Italy hardens him. Winter arrives, not as decoration, but as an argument won by the cold. Fields turn to glass at night. Boots discover new ways to hurt feet. Breath becomes a thing you can see abandon you. He becomes methodical, not cocky, not loud. A craftsman who has accepted that his craft is ruin, yet practices it with a decency that leans away from cruelty. He knows where to stand to help others stand. He knows when to vanish and reappear where doubt had just taken root. Somewhere near the Gothic Line, a patrol goes wrong the way a draw goes wrong, stuck at the worst moment, and then this useless toughness. Shots. A cry that says a name and leaves it unfinished. A flare that misses the point. He takes responsibility without asking permission. His squad is scattered. The lieutenant is hurt and trying not to be. A corporal has both hands on the wrong artery and hopes it listens. He moves, not in straight lines now, but in a geometry that belongs to hunters and saints. He collects the lost. He deposits them behind the stone lip of a culvert with a tenderness that would be a lullaby if hands could sing. Someone calls him crazy. Someone else calls him what he is. In the end, 3 men owe him the next 50 years of their lives. They will spend them without ever finding the right words to pay interest. He will never send a bill. Undefeated is not a score. It is a refusal. Tonight, he refuses to leave anyone to the arithmetic of winter and chance. There's a river that is really a stern line drawn through a county's memory. The war lays claim to it. The people do not agree. On a map, the bridge is anonymous. In reality, it has been the site of first kisses, the passing of hearses, the crossing of cows and harvesters, the songs of boys who are now somewhere else, singing other songs. Intelligence reaches them torn and taped and badly translated by exhaustion. The enemy will move guns across that bridge after midnight. If those guns move, the next morning will be a certain shape and it will not be kind. If they do not move, dawn has more possible forms. Demolitions are meager. The engineers are elsewhere. The river runs dark and distrustful. Orders arrive again, more spare than usual. Do what you can. He goes alone because this isn't a task you hand to a crowd. He carries what he must. He carries more than that in silence. The night welcomes him the way old debts welcome collectors. He slides through reed and shadow. The water licks the bank with the patience of a cat. Under the bridge, wood creaking softly, stone sweating quietly, he meets the old problem. too much to do, not enough to do it with. He measures distances with fingers because rulers don't kneel well in mud. He wraps cord where cord will listen. He places charges where the bridge might admit to being vulnerable. Bootsteps on the planks overhead tell him the clock has learned to hate him. He pauses, breath folded tight, listening to men who don't know they are walking over a conversation between one man's resolve and one bridge's doubt. He finishes. He withdraws into a pocket of shadow that feels like forgiveness. When the charges speak, they don't roar. They pronounce a sentence, simple and correct. The bridge kneels. Then it lies down. Downriver, alarm rises like birds. He swims cold, his body writing its brief will in blood that has decided to be stubborn. On the far bank, he lies in weeds and could be a contour line. He grins. He can't help it. The grin isn't for the destruction. It's for the lives that suddenly get to be something other than names. By dawn, there is no bridge to argue about. Only a story the river will keep telling in its own accent. He returns wet, shivering, teeth clicking out the new language he has learned, one where faith in a task becomes a kind of music that drowns fear. His friends look at him as if he were a weather event. He shrugs. He asks for coffee. He warms his hands around the tin and remembers his mother's stove. Undefeated again means this: impossible set next to necessary, and necessary winning. Every war keeps a day in its pocket that it intends to spend all at once. This is that day. Orders not. Radios argue with clouds. A planned advance becomes an improvisation scored for exhaustion and steel. Enemy armor pushes where maps claimed it wouldn't. Infantry follow. Surprised to discover courage still attached to their bones, he's sent forward with a team to hold a crossroads that looks like any other. And because of that, it means everything. 4 roads, 4 chances to be wrong. A chapel that has watched lovers and funerals and now must watch this. A field that used to be wheat and is now a list of lessons about cover and sight lines. They set a line the way a mother sets a table, everything in its place, not because it is neat, but because it is love. Ammunition where it must be, angles checked and rechecked, a radio that pretends it will work when called upon. Then the armor appears, indifferent and significant, a prow of metal moving like a decision, infantry behind it like a current behind a ship. He has no bazooka. He has learned to hate that fact without letting it poison him. He has a rifle. He has grenades. He has another idea. He waits until the tank is where the road narrows into arrogance. Then he rises into a world that has just remembered him and throws smoke with a conviction that makes smoke a weapon. The tank hesitates, the way large things do when a small thing suddenly matters. In that half breath, he runs, not away, across. He reaches the ditch, becomes the ditch, moves along it like a rumor. The smoke wraps the road in uncertainty. He counts the rattle of tracks, hears the breath of the driver, as if the man were inches away, confessing something. In a sense, he is. He stands. He climbs. He places a grenade into a world that doesn't want it, and then insists. The tank shudders. Metal learns a new language. The hatch flares open. A man bursts out into a lesson he will never complete. Our private is already gone, not vanished, relocated to where the next thing must be done. Infantry scatter wrong, then regroup with determination. Rifles begin to write the day's obituary. He moves among his men, an editor and a friend. He places courage where sentences falter. He places bullets where arguments must end. Hours tilt. The sun loses interest in being helpful. The radio breaks up into syllables and finally into prayer. At one point, they are 3 men. At another, they are 9. The count becomes a superstition he refuses to participate in. He counts tasks instead. A second tank pushes into view, angrier and slightly more careful, which is worse. He pulls a box from where it has been buried for when luck improves. An anti-tank mine, ugly and plain. He walks out into the road the way a man might walk into a cornfield to check on growth. Calm, accepting. The bullets argue fruitlessly. He lays the mine with the ceremony of a mason setting final stone. The tank hits the idea. The idea wins. By dusk, the crossroads is theirs, not because it chose them, but because he refused to let it choose anyone else. Men whisper that word, undefeated, and now it means not today, not here, not while he breathes. He does not hear them. He sits on the church step, removes a pebble from his boot, and thinks about how tired he is of thinking about pebbles. The bell rings once, broken, a sound like a thank you that never learned grammar. Armistice does not arrive, not yet. The front pushes north by inches and prayers. Towns change ownership like second-hand coats. He walks into places where bread tastes like apology and wine like relief. He shakes hands he will never see again. He learns that children can laugh even when tanks have recently been conversational partners. He is offered cigarettes, soup, a look that says more than any grammar allows. He accepts what he can. He always declines the offer to be a hero out loud. He understands that stories need shapes. He refuses to be a statue while his blood stubbornly remains warm. News of him runs ahead now. It is not accurate. It is not false. A dozen hills have his shadow on them. A dozen bridges remember his hands. A dozen men in a dozen kitchens will one day describe him to their sons as proof that something good can grow even in a field seeded with iron. He writes home, brief notes full of weather and generalities. He keeps the sharp, hot parts to himself, not because he doubts they can understand, but because he knows they shouldn't have to. On a night that tastes like rain, he sits under a truck and listens to the sky changing its mind. He thinks of the farm. He thinks of a girl who smiled at him once across a dance floor, then married someone kind, and he is glad it wasn't him, because he has learned what kindness requires, and he knows he no longer has enough of it to share. A friend asks what keeps him going. He says something about duty because it's expected. The real answer is simpler. He keeps moving because the men to his left and right keep moving, and because somewhere a mother is boiling water for potatoes, and because bridges should belong to children and not to maps. Undefeated, he has learned, is a fragile word. It can be true today and untrue tomorrow. He carries it carefully, palms open, like a bird that could choose to leave. It happens in a valley that looks harmless, green, like a soft word. A creek makes the sound of a small life minding its business. The map calls it a crossroads again, because maps prefer repetition to poetry. Orders arrive cold. Hold here, delay there. Make time where there isn't any. Protect the flank of men you'll never meet. By noon, the valley decides to tell the truth. Machine guns pluck at the grass. Mortars outline arguments in the air. A tree collapses as if exhausted by history. He sees the line bend where bending becomes breaking. He moves without asking. He moves toward the sound that says nobody else wants this job. He lays down fire that is less fury than grammar, commas where movement should pause, periods where it should stop definitively. A runner stumbles into him, face raw, shouting that the left is water now, flowing backward. He nods. He understands water. He understands that you can teach it a new bed if you show it where to go. He takes 6 men, then 4, then 2. Then he finds himself alone, because war is a ruthless auditor and has discovered everyone else's mistakes first. Alone doesn't scare him. Alone is a familiar room. He chooses his ground, a shallow fold, a thorn bush, a rock that believes in loyalty. He counts ammunition with the precision of a shopkeeper who knows every coin. Then he becomes larger, not in size, in consequence. Every shot he places has a second intention behind it, a little push of meaning. Not here, not now, turn away. He speaks to the enemy in that language until they answer by adjusting their plans, which is all he ever wanted. He holds half an hour. Time swells and contracts. A lung that isn't sure it wishes to continue. His hands burn. His shoulder bruises with the blunt honesty of recoil. His cheek welds to wood and becomes it. The left reforms. Men return with the startled joy of those who expected to meet nothing but absence. Leaders shout and are believed. The valley begins to unbend. Someone crawls to him and touches his boot, the way one might touch a bell that has just rung. "We're here," the man says, tears and snot and laughter all arguing on his face. He nods. He doesn't stop. He keeps being larger until it is no longer needed. When finally the line moves forward and the horizon opens like a window after a long winter, he lets the rifle fall and realizes his hands are shaking, not from fear, from the bill coming due. He pays it in silence. Undefeated, again, is a word other people will say later. What he says now is nothing. He breathes. He lives. He stands. War loosens its grip, the way old men rise from chairs, slowly, with complaint, reluctantly agreeing to the next part. Papers are signed far away. Guns fall quiet, here, then there, as if shamed into it. He returns to a town whose roads remember him better than some people do. The house is smaller than his memory and more beautiful. The mailbox still holds his name like a friend who never learned how to let go. Inside, the kitchen light is wrong. It's not dimmer, it's honest. It shows that time has passed without cruelty and with the stubborn decency of chores accomplished. He stands in that light until he has the measure of it. His mother touches his cheek and lies convincingly. "You didn't change." He smiles and declines to argue. Neighbors shake his hand as if checking to see whether their stories were right. He is courteous. He asks about tractors and tomatoes and dogs. He answers questions about Europe as if Europe were a cousin who can't stop making the conversation about himself. At night, he goes to the back step and listens to the field. Crickets conducting their endless rehearsal. A far road murmuring politics to itself. Stars pretending to be reliable. He thinks of bridges, hills, crossroads. He thinks of men whose laughter he can still summon if he closes his eyes and turns his head slightly to the right, as if tuning a radio. He hears them. He hears himself among them, younger and older at once. People will tell his story the way people tell all such stories, sharpening the angles, polishing the impossible. They will call him a one-man army, as if he chose it. He did not. He was made into it by need and by love. He accepted not the glory, but the burden. He never lost a position he swore to keep. He never left a man he could carry. He never surrendered the part of himself that knew what bridges are really for. He is undefeated in the only way that matters.